make some sense of it all. But I can see it makes no sense at all. Is it cool to go to sleep on the floor? 'Cause I don't think that I can take anymore. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. I am trying some new streaming software, so if there's anything weird about the audio, there should be the whole pass-through. Everything should work the way it works usually on OBS. Everything should work normal. But if it doesn't, please let me know in the live chat and things like that, because I like to put out a good product. I'm recording the show, so if this isn't great, it's going to be normal on the recording, and I'll try again tomorrow. But for all intents and purposes, this should be fun. Live streaming on Rumble, live streaming on YouTube, live streaming on Locals, Twitch, and more. So let's try this whole thing out. Epstein files? What Epstein files? You guys are talking about the Epstein files? And we've got, Texas and North Carolina flooding? Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're talking about the Epstein files. Bad take by Trump, big fumble by Trump, and we'll see how this whole thing plays out. Mega base is being fractured, and there are a lot of people taking advantage of that. And now Democrats are calling for the Epstein list to be released, which is hilarious and maybe part of the game. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen with this whole Epstein list? I have absolutely no idea, but we are going to start there looking at all of this whole bait and switch, and Trump have a little temper tantrum about people asking about the Epstein list. But I don't think we're going to get any kind of honest closure on this, not in the short term, and maybe not even in the medium term, maybe not ever. So we'll talk about that. Grok is set free by a fired developer. That's at the end of the show today. Weird and interesting, and Grok went, Grok noticed. There was lots of noticing happening by Grok. Anti-government militia in the military and arrests made. There's a previous case that happened, and I'll share that with you as well, that bears a lot of similarities, and the guy didn't end up doing much jail time. I think 40 days or something like that. So the Coots guys got more time, which is interesting. And I don't believe the RCMP and their allegations. So it's very interesting. We'll see how it all plays out. I've got that for you today. No one gets to know which projects are going to be fast-tracked. Mark Carney's Bill C-5 passed with the help of the Conservatives, of course, and because of all of that, the projects that are going to get fast-tracked by C5, we don't get to know about them. We don't get to know how much they cost. We don't get to know anything about them. So sit down, be quiet, and pay your taxes, citizen. And full-blown communists are running for the NDP leadership. So, man, there's a whole lot of things going on and lots to get to. So let's get to it. First, we've got to start with the Epstein stuff. And this is Tucker Carlson and, I don't know, somebody else talking about the Epstein list. And they're shocked. They're shocked and dismayed at what's going on with regards to everybody's behavior about the Epstein list. I agree. I can't disagree. Here we go.
Let's say the so-called Epstein files released with many of the influencers. There was outrage at every step. So they're not stupid.
But how can you say that thousands of children were raped, but I'm not going to find out who raped them?
Yeah.
How can you say that?
I agree completely.
They said that. By the way, when Pam Bondi went on television and said, I have a videotape of kids getting abused, I followed this case closely, and I know a lot of the people involved, as I've told you. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. I didn't know that. Really? Thousands of children got raped?
Yeah.
Who raped them? Where are the rapists? Like, why aren't they in jail? What? This is the Department of Justice.
Yes.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I just think it's very dangerous to play around with this stuff. Like, very dangerous.
Well,
I don't want a revolution, but if you wanted a revolution, this is how you would act.
Let's say
right. I mean, I don't want a revolution. That is very, very dangerous for the chocolate cereal futures. Chuck says, just in, President Trump loses it when asked by a reporter about Jeffrey Epstein. Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? Says Trump. Yeah, we seriously are. And we seriously thought that it would concern you too. Here we go.
Yeah, sure.
Could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking... We have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that,
So, what? I thought, well, here's Zeke, and he says, "Dear Mr. President, yeah, we're still talking about Epstein. We're always going to talk about Epstein. This isn't going away. You said you were going to be transparent. You said you were going to drain the swamp. You said things were going to be different. Being open and honest with us about Epstein and the files is part of that. I support you, but I can't support this. Please, on behalf of all Americans, please release the complete unredacted list. Let the cards fall where they may. Firm handshake and gentlemanly nod, Zeke." So Zeke's not happy about all this. And, I can agree with him there. Laura Loomer has the receipts proving, or she says they prove, that Epstein was an FBI asset, at the very least. She says agent, but asset. And she says, here's the document claiming that he's the asset. Epstein has also provided information to the FBI as agreed upon. Case agent advised that no federal prosecution will occur in this matter as long as Epstein continues to uphold his agreement with the state of Florida. Isn't that interesting? Laura Loomer is responding to the video I just showed you, and she says, and Pam Bondi says that she doesn't know anything about this, but she'll get back to us about that. But Loomer says, "When will you be getting back to us on whether or not Jeffrey Epstein, quote, was an agent? I did the work for you. See below." Here's Pam Bondi.
To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And then to him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And then to him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And then
right. So she doesn't have any knowledge of that? Isn't that weird? It's strange. Sorry, I'm trying to manage the new stream stuff. Okay, it's not very smooth at all. I'm working on it. Sorry, I don't know why it's being weird, but it's also behaving weird in my monitor here as well. So apologies. Again, the recorded show will be normal, other than me sitting here talking about the stream being weird. Anyway, Dr. Russell says Q 3385 from 6 years ago says, "You didn't think the Epstein investigation began a few months ago, did you? It was all under the direction and oversight of Jeff Sessions. Expect a lot more to become public and an unsealing." And this is July 9th from 2019. Weird coincidence. It doesn't seem any more than that, right? But I guess we'll see. Today is July 9th. Lola says, "Imagine being told to forget about bringing justice to child rapists. This is the level of evil we are dealing with. There's no spin on this that will change my mind." Yeah, again, I agree. DC Drano says, "I wish I could get excited about this, but the Epstein stuff paints this in a very negative light, I think. If we can't get Epstein and we can't get Puff Daddy, why do we think we're going to get Brennan and Comey?" New York Post is reporting FBI launches criminal investigations of John Brennan and James Comey over Trump-Russia probe, Department of Justice sources. So according to Department of Justice sources, they're under investigation. Oh no, I bet they're quaking in their boots, right? Because nothing ever happens. DC Drano says he wishes he could get excited, but if the Department of Justice will cover up for Epstein pedos, how can we trust them to go after these guys? Yeah, accurate. Absolutely accurate. Joe Rogan says, "Shout out to all the people that still don't believe in conspiracies. Your ability to stick to your guns is inspiring." So there's clearly something going on here. There's clearly things that are very, very odd about all this. And yet, here is Suspicious Fry, and he's responding to Cat Turd. Cat Turd says, all the MAGA people who are upset about this are actually just bots. Everybody's bots, and really, we trust our president. And this is my Suspicious Fry. I agree, but I didn't make this. But Suspicious Fry says, "Me when a bunch of right-wing influencers tell me I should forget about the Epstein files." Yep. Vigilant Fox says, "This Epstein thing is by far the biggest fumble of the Trump administration we've had thus far." Yeah, I think that's accurate. Here we go.
The number one trending hashtag right now on X is Epstein. 2 million people have tweeted with the topic of Epstein. Number two is Nicki Minaj at 100,000. Comey's at 42,500. There is a reason why people are asking about this. This is by far, and I'm a supporter. 3 times I voted for this man. This is by far the biggest fumble of the administration they've had thus far, and here's the reason why. If you remember the president winning, he had a conversation with Fox News, the great Rachel Campos Duffy, and she asked, "Mr. President, 9/11, yes. John F. Kennedy, yes. Epstein, he didn't say yes. He was a little bit hesitant of bringing that information out. Why? So why does his leadership team go out there and are like, we have this information and we're going to release this and cash, and let me tell you what we have with Pam Bondi out of the state of Florida. She knew everything about Bondi, about Epstein. Why are you fumbling this? Why are you not having an emergency meeting together to conversate and say, hey, we're going to be on the same page with messaging on this? All you have to do is send a message to everybody, say, God, let's have a conference call. Here's what we're going to be saying about this, because this was a very important issue to not 80% of the voters that voted for President Trump, but I think 20% of the voters wanted to know what's going to happen with Epstein, and it's a big letdown.
Yep. So not great. Not great, that's for sure. Here's Carl. He says, what would it have looked like if Kamala were president? No Epstein, no money to Ukraine, conflicts in the Middle East, more spending, more debt. Exactly the same. Yeah, not wrong. And what's Trump done? I mean, there are certain things that he's done, but a lot of people look at that and say, why are you supporting Israel, man? Clandestine says, just like that, the Dems and mainstream media are now clamoring for the Epstein list. We couldn't get the Dems and mainstream media to talk about Epstein for 15 plus years, and now they're claiming Trump is the one covering everything up. I think there might be more going on here than meets the eye. There are elements to this situation that we as the public don't understand. Perhaps a trap is being laid. But one thing is for certain, the Dems and mainstream media are capitalizing on this moment in an attempt to divide Trump's base, and it's working. They've identified a rift in Trump's support, and they're amplifying it. And Trump isn't helping, to be honest. So we'll see how this whole thing plays out. And yeah, people are really complaining about the stream, and I hear you. I can see how crappy it is. It's really, really struggling. So I'll be trying to go back to the other one tomorrow, and I'll release this show as usual on all the platforms that I usually upload it. So sorry about that, everyone. I'll end the stream now, and we'll carry on, and we'll do the rest of the show normal. Here we go. Back to the rest of the show. Here's our grab bag of governance, and Wiretap Media says, breaking Canada's procurement ombudsman claims there are bad actors operating without accountability inside the federal government's procurement system, and they don't have the proper tools to handle it. Yeah, he's saying there's bad actors right at the end here. He just wraps it up. Here we go.
Is a little bit unfair to the procurement community because they are trying. And again, I'm not discounting the fact that we have some bad actors. Absolutely we do. And part of our oversight responsibility is to root out those bad actors and ensure accountability.
So is he going to root out the bad actors? No. Probably not. I doubt it. I very much doubt it. CTV News says, keep away from wokeness. DEI, new minister warns municipalities. Major municipalities should steer clear of creating drug injection sites, licensing body rub parlors, and banning plastic straws, says the first municipal affairs minister from rural Alberta since January 21. Using terms like woke and DEI, Dan Williams said municipalities of every size and type should concentrate on services taxpayers deserve and expect. I want to make sure that Edmonton and Calgary are doing their jobs. There's not a left wing and a right wing to plow a road or deliver water or treat wastewater. These are just the obligations of municipalities, he told the McLeod Gazette. But if they start veering into plastic straw bans and DEI policies and legalizing business licenses for brothels, then they're way off base from the responsibility of the municipalities, said Williams, the member of Peace River and the former Minister of Mental Health and Addiction. Urban centers receive heavy investments from the province because it makes economic sense to centralize services like specialized healthcare. We know we can't have tertiary care and all sorts of high-level care in every rural town, but we need to make sure these big city centers are working for rural residents as well as urban residents, said Williams. So it's interesting. And can these rules come to Ontario? I would love to have municipalities stop reducing the speeds on all of the roads. They're reducing it to 40 kilometers an hour. There's places in Elora that are country roads that are now kind of backing on to residential neighborhoods, and they've reduced the speed of these side roads, side road 1, side road 2, side road 3, to 40 kilometers an hour. And nobody does it. Everybody goes 70. But some people virtue signal. There are certain people who drive slowly on purpose to virtue signal, and it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I saw one of these people. They made eye contact with me, and I won't tell you what they looked like, but you can imagine in their car by themselves. Anyway, it's ridiculous, and I could tell, and I was like, don't be angry, Mark, be zen. And I was. But still, the people working at every level of government are working for woke zealots, and worse. CTV News, moving on, is reporting, Envoy says Canada is coming closer to recognizing Palestinian statehood. Oh, goody. This whole thing is a distraction. We're being full-blown invaded, and our leadership is humming and hawing over Palestinian statehood. Unbelievable. Doesn't quite cut it. Just not quite at all. Susie says, wow, stealing Pierre Poilievre's signs already. By-election Battle River Crowfoot. So people are driving around and stealing Pierre Poilievre's signs. And isn't that interesting? I find that very interesting. Is that election interference? Yeah, I think so. Probably, right? So I don't know, man. The whole thing is very, very sketchy, very sketch. Eves says, I'm running to lead the new Democratic Party. Canada needs a mainstream voice willing to challenge capitalism and imperialism while promoting decolonization, degrowth, and economic democracy. So this guy's a communist, and he's running for, look at this. People were putting up images of Lenin beside this guy. So Yves Engler for NDP leader, echo socialism or extinction. So concerning. The NDP is flat broke. The NDP doesn't have any money. Jagmeet Singh bankrupt that party. And they're on life support. They're probably going to cross the floor to the Liberals, honestly. And I can't imagine any of this going well. Realistically, how difficult would it be for sane people to take over the NDP? Right now, the communists are trying to. Anyway, he goes on a long diatribe that I'm not going to pay any attention to because I just don't care. But he's a communist and he wants to take over the NDP. And there are a lot of people in Canada who want to enable him. It's pretty crazy. CBC Watcher says Peter Menzies with Harrison Lohman and Tara Henley on Canadian media subsidies. 10 years ago, the idea of taking public subsidy within media was anathema. It was just no, that would never happen. And now it's celebrated with the terminology. Also, the author of the Canadian part is the chair of the committee at CRA that approves which Canadian news outlet qualifies for funding. Isn't that weird? Isn't that strange? Isn't that just a little odd? It's very, very interesting. Grandpa says in Saskatchewan, the gopher epidemic is out of control. Thousands of acres are being destroyed because the current control methods are ineffective. We need to bring back strychnine, some poison that kills them. Piss on the feds' rules. Enough is enough. Yeah, so people are having very negative outcomes, and it's because of bad policies. What else is new in Canada? Must be Tuesday, right? Or is it Wednesday? It's Wednesday. Must be Wednesday. Darn. Alexander Lavoie says, what's going on in Montreal? Man poops in the open daytime streets during the Summer Jazz Festival near Palais Place Arts. And so weird. And I mean, street poopers abound, right? And this is not good. It's not good. Canada is declining in real time right in front of our eyes. And are we ignoring it? Kind of, I guess. Kind of, yeah. Expat Canadian is responding to Mark Miller. Mark Miller says, immigration caps are contributing to lower asking rents in Canada. CMHC says, I saw a list of the rents in Canada, and I only remember this because I lived in Welland. Welland was the cheapest rent at $15.55, and I can't remember what the next one was. All sorts of cities have crazy high rents, just ridiculously high rents for no reason at all. And, well, for no reason at all, because these people flooded our country with invaders. That's why. And so we're in a situation where the rents have doubled. I lived in Welland, and I had an apartment. Well, no, it was a room in a house for $300 for a whole semester, right? But $15.55 is way too high for a city like Welland. Expats Canadian. But the other point here is, are you saying it's a supply and demand issue? I'm old enough, says expat Canadian, to remember this same Liberal government and its allies in the real estate industry telling us that supply and demand arguments were racist and that flooding the country with a tsunami of migrants doesn't put upward pressure on rents. Yeah, they lied. They lied then, they lied now. It's all lies. Turtles all the way down. Greg Wycliffe is talking about all of the issues in Canada with regards to the number of people who have overstayed their welcome, overstayed their legal right to be here. And Pierre Poilievre what's he saying about all this? He's saying people have a right to be here. He understands why people like coming to Canada.
We reject the radical Century Initiative, which Liberals have endorsed, saying that they want to bring our population to 100 million people over this century. Look, we don't blame people for wanting to come here. Almost all of us trace our lineage back to immigrants, other than our First Peoples.
I'm a first-generation Canadian, but I know people who've been here since before Canada was Canada, and they say this is nonsense. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, madman? Here is Moose on the Loose, and M. Brandt is sharing this. This is a staff sergeant at the RCMP, reported by CBC Live, and if you have traditional values, that could be a problem. That could be a big problem. That could be an indication that you're an extremist or a terrorist or something. Traditional values, terrorism, according to the RCMP. How is this legitimate? How can anybody accept what these lunatics put out at all? Here we go.
And when you're finally, I wanted to ask, when you're talking about seeing individuals engage in that anti-authority and perhaps escalating their beliefs or their motives in that level, I'm wondering what the public can do in order to be vigilant, or what they can do to help in trying to ensure that there is safety and security on that front.
Well, radicalization in general quite often will show by people isolating themselves and changing their behavior, like changing what they're saying on a subject, like becoming more extremist. And if someone was very believed in equal gender rights, but all of a sudden are leaning towards traditional values, and that might be a sign that they're becoming more extremist. But we also have to remember that having the most extremist views is perfectly legal in Canada, and that it's only acting with violence to prove that view that becomes a criminal offense.
Well, thank you so much for offering some clarity here. We appreciate your time.
Having traditional values is very extreme, but good thing for us. Having extreme values is not against the law. Only acting on those extreme values is against the law. What kind of insane nonsense? Having traditional values is not a terrorist thing, by the way. Having traditional values is very normal, and you should not feel bad about it. Here is Wiretap Media, and they say the RCMP released 2 suspects connected to an organized crime group from India who have been shooting up Vancouver businesses in an attempt to extort the owners for cash. Cool. Here we go.
2 individual suspects were arrested and taken into custody on behalf of a joint forces operation.
Less than 24 hours after RCMP announced the arrests of 2 Surrey residents on extortion allegations, the suspects were released Friday morning. No charges laid. Much of the extortion has been linked to an organized crime group in India called the Lawrence Bishnoi Gang.
Without charges, you cannot keep someone in custody for more than 24 hours. That's why the Surrey suspects were released. RCMP refusing to say if they are Canadian citizens. Police still investigating. They have yet to send a file to Crown prosecutors.
Super weird, right? So two suspects, not Canadian citizens, maybe. Could be Canadian citizens, but who knows? The RCMP won't say. And they're released because no charges, right? But extortion, but no charges. Okay, weird. But here's court upholds Calgary pastor Derek Ramier's breach of sentencing conditions. Calgary pastor Derek Ramier on Tuesday was found to have breached his house arrest sentence conditions. The judge decided that he had breached his sentence condition order by staying on the courthouse steps after appeal hearings on 2 separate occasions when the SCO mandated that he must strictly go to and from the approved location unless he had prior authorization from his parole officer. He was at the location on the steps, and that was a breach. Okay, and they put him back in jail for 61 days for it. After listening to suggestions from both the Crown and Ramier's defense, the judge decided, though, that there was an SCO breach, he could be released Tuesday evening after processing with additional conditions added to his sentence. Like, don't wait on the stairs at the location you were told to attend for your hearing. Ramier was convicted in December for criminal harassment for his objection to Drag Queen Story Hour at a Calgary public library. He was sentenced to 1 year of house arrest and 2 years of probation. Additional charges of mischief and causing a disturbance were dropped. So, mischief and causing a disturbance, but he's in jail for criminal harassment. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. But this guy, who's extortion, no charges. No charges. You can't keep anybody more than 24 hours with no charges, obviously. We're very reasonable in Canada. Natalia says, which side are you rooting for? Canadian Armed Forces members plotted anti-government militia, the RCMP say. I don't believe the RCMP because they're lying liars, I think. Andrew Lawton says the man accused of burning down a historic St. Thomas building on the weekend was a prolific offender who was out on bail for more than a dozen charges. He was also on probation for another arson. This has to stop. So, yeah, pretty brutal, right? Like, you get put in jail for a breach for attending the location that you were told to attend and standing on the stairs at that location. But if you light buildings on fire and you're a prolific offender, See ya, buddy. Don't do bad things or we might let you out of jail again. Okay, right? Like, what? It doesn't make any sense. Globe and Mail is reporting, this was supposed to be all together. Canadian Armed Forces members among 4 charged in Quebec extremist plot, the RCMP says. Canada's National Police have arrested 4 men, including 2 active members of the Canadian Forces, alleging that they diverted items from the military in hopes of using them to create an extremist militia and take over a plot of land north of Quebec City. This doesn't sound like this sounds like a half-baked plot, honestly. The RCMP alleged in a statement that the men were planning to create an anti-government militia. To achieve this, they took part in military-style training as well as shooting, ambush, survival, and navigational exercises. They also conducted a scouting operation, the force said. In a brief video hearing at the Quebec City Courthouse Tuesday afternoon, Crown Prosecutor Sarah Moussa objected to the men's release without adding further details. The 4 remain detained, and their next court date is set for July 14th. So, weird. I don't, again, have any faith in the RCMP at all. Here's the RCMP's publication about this whole thing. Ideologically motivated violent extremism, 4 individuals charged. And I don't know that this is going to hold up. Here's a case that Pat says. He says there's a CAF reservist who got charged, Canadian Armed Forces reservist, who got charged with terrorism in 2001 during the Quebec City G7 summit. Lots of similarities minus the land part. He did 40 days in jail and was eventually acquitted when it was revealed that the RCMP set them up in a Mr. Big investigation. His name was Alex Bossino, and he's currently running for the PQ in a by-election in Quebec. He is a former Radio Canada employee. So interesting, right? So I don't know that they're going to be able to throw the books at these guys, but they're trying to. Well, later during the speech section, we talk about how they're loading newspaper stories in order to sell a narrative, basically. But the whole world is a stage, and we're being lied to. Here's Doug Ford and Danielle Smith. Well, this is Danielle Smith talking about pipelines. The news person says pipelines aren't popular. Isn't that interesting? The editorializing the question, very interesting to me. Here's Danielle Smith talking about pipelines.
On the pipelines front, I'm curious what your actual plan is there. There's not necessarily a whole lot of love for oil pipelines necessarily heading east. So what can we expect in terms of concrete, where it might start, where it might go?
Well, first of all, I'd say we have done lots of polling on the attitude towards pipelines. And in every single province, it's a majority, and in some cases well above 70%. And I don't think Ontario is any different. Ontario, I think, knows that with Line 5 right now, it goes through Michigan to feed Sarnia, and that puts them in a precarious position. The governor of Michigan has been trying to shut that pipeline down for years. And so we have always felt that having a made in Canada solution with the pipeline option going to not only Ontario and Quebec, it just makes sense from an energy security point of view. And the world changed in November. And I think Canadians understand that we've got to start acting like a country. We've got to start supporting each other. And I think that is the prevailing sentiment.
Premier Smith was bang on. We have the governor of Michigan constantly threatening to close down the pipeline. Do you know the disaster that would create in Ontario? It would basically shut down Pearson International Airport, largest airport in the country. Prices would go through the roof. I'm tired of relying on the United States. And let's make no mistake about it. I love the U.S. I love the American people. But there's one person that's causing a problem right now, and that's President Trump. We want to move forward. We want to build the AMCAN fortress. But the days of relying on the United States 100%, they're done. They're gone. We're going to start